What's up YouTube? It's your girl Sharita21 back with another braid video. This time is small knotless and I'm doing a peekaboo effect on the color. Now if you caught my last video, you know that I'm using the glance formation braid. I got one pack in a 1B and one pack in the color copper. They're both 30-inch braiding hair and they are pre-stretched, but they are feathered way better than the Spectra braid hair that I've used in previous videos. Now I'm starting off by pre-sectioning small portions of the braiding hair, and I'm using my little spool holder in order to section it off. I am starting with the copper because I'm going to do that in the back. And again, in my last video, I showed you that I had sectioned my hair off, just pre-parting it and braiding up the parted sections so that I'll have everything laid out for my braid pattern. So what I end up doing is pulling out 2 rows at a time and putting the rest of my hair away. And by unraveling 2 rows, what I'm able to do is to then clean up the parts a little bit better. So I have 2 sections detangled and separated, and I'm just going to lay the Shine and Jam over the part and then use a rat tail comb to clean up the part now that it's gelled down. Once I have my part cleaned up, I can part the row out to make out the individual braids. On this first row, because it was so thin, I just did 3 braids on that section. So you can see here I'm just laying gel in between them, and I'm going to pull off that middle section so I can put that away while I focus on the 2 braids on the edge. I added a little gel around the whole section just to help to smooth it out, and then I part that section into 3 pieces and start braiding. Now I cross over once and twice, and it's on the 3rd crossover that I'm adding in the braiding hair, and you can see I'm just adding one end of it in. I cross the braid back over again, and then when I come to the next crossover is when I feed the other tail of the braiding hair in. I also add the 2nd strand of braiding hair in on that same crossover. So here I'm pulling the back tail of the braiding hair in, but I'm also adding another piece of braiding hair. Then I cross over, and then I add my 2nd strand in here and also grab another piece of braiding hair. So that is the way I do my feed-ins. Because I do start it with the 1-2 on my real hair before I add the braiding hair on the 3, I do get a little bit of a gap at the root. For me, that's helpful so the braid is not tight, but you could feed in on the 1, like as soon as you start the braid, and that will help it to be a little bit closer to the scalp. For each of these braids that I started with, I added 5 strands of braiding hair. I did notice a little tangling with this braiding hair. This is my first time using this brand, but I know that I wasn't really detangling it as I was feeding the hair in either. I was more focused about gripping the hair and making sure that I was feeding it in correctly. So I wasn't really detangling it until I was done feeding the hair in. So I know I was creating some tangles. You can see here I'm taking a minute to try to get those out. But once I have all the hair fed into the braid, I just change my hand position so that I can grip it a little bit better. I focus on smoothing some gel over my ends so that I can tuck it into the braid. And I'm doing this folding braid technique in order to make sure that the braid is nice and tight. Once I have that braided down a bit, I move on to the next section and repeat the feed-in braid process. So since this was my second braid, I don't know if I was playing around with the sizing or if I just lost count, but you can see there that I stopped for a minute to count how many strands of hair I added in. On this braid, I ended up adding 6 strands of braiding hair instead of 5. So once I start braiding this down, I am noticing that it's feeling a little thick. And then when I compare it to the other braid, I'm like, yeah, I messed up. So I move on to the third braid and I go back to using 5 strands of braiding hair instead of 6. My strategy with getting these braids done, because I knew I was doing smaller braids and I was also using longer braiding hair than I normally use, I knew this was going to take me longer than what my other braids have taken me in the past. So keeping in mind that these are DIY braids, I'm doing them on myself. So I'm giving myself enough time to not be bogged down with this process. I fully went into this preparing to do this over a few days time span and not put pressure on myself to install and complete this whole braid style in one day. So what my strategy was to go through all of the sections and at least get the braiding hair fed in. And I'm just braiding a little ways past the feed in and then moving on to the next braid. So the intentions is to at least install the braids first, and then I can come back and braid the ends down. So here you can see where I'm braiding down some ways, and I have all of these kind of braided down, but I'm leaving the ends open. All right, so that's when I reevaluate the sizes and I go back to that second braid and just pull out one of the strands of hair. It was pretty easy to just kind of move up to that last section and kind of slide the braiding hair out and then come back and tighten the braid back up instead of having to redo the entire braid. So I'm off to a good start. This is my first row done. And what I'm doing with the copper, instead of streaking it through my entire hair, I'm just going to focus it only on the back section of my head. So just from my ears down, and it's going to create like a peekaboo color effect because all of the rest of the hair is black. This is also the point where things went left. I got more than half of my head done before I realized that I was not feeling the size of these braids. They were coming out way too big. Now, even though my parts are not super consistent, for the most part, the size of my parts is not the reason why. Look at the size of these braids. They're coming out like large, not even medium, when you compare them to the ones that I started with. And so what I decided is that I would be better off feeding in 3 strands of braiding hair instead of 5. And I actually went back and redid all of those braids. So to me, they look way better this size. This is definitely the look I'm going for. They're smaller. I don't know if you would call these small or you would call them medium still. They're definitely mediums. Definitely towards the small side. So, and now you can kind of see where I was going with that color effect. Once the black hair or the black braids lay over top of it, you can barely see it. But when you lift it up, you see that pop of color. I also ran out of gel, so I ended up buying the Magic Fingers Shine and Jam, and I am pleasantly surprised with this product. I like it a lot better than regular Shine and Jam. It's a little bit thicker and the smell is different, so I like this one. I'm just showing you, this is my final braid. So I'm just showing you the feed-in process again here, not to be redundant, just to show you the difference of how that looks with the 3 strands. And here, this is the one that I decided to feed in on the 1 instead of feeding in on the 3. So I fed, crossed over, now I'm feeding the 2nd strand in now. So this is getting it a little bit closer to the scalp. I did not redo all of my braids this way when I went back, but the ones towards the top, I did try to focus on getting the hair a little bit closer. To me, they're still loose. I mean, after the fact, they are not super tight to the scalp, but I'm okay with that. I think that's one of the things that I like most about feed-in braids is the fact that you can move them around. They're not super tight, but you know, you can definitely focus on your grip game if you want to make sure that yours are tighter to the. One other note, I did run out of hair. So this hair at the top is not even 1B. It's like it's a little bit off black. I don't know what brand it is or anything, but it turned out to be the same length. I just happen to have it in my stash, but I probably had almost a whole bundle of the copper hair left. I just ran out of the black. So of course, if I had have split the hair or distributed the colors differently, then I wouldn't have needed to buy extra hair. I would have been good just using the 6 bundles of that glance formation braid in order to do the whole style. And of course, the hair in the front of my head is a little bit longer than the strands that I was showing you before. So I'm just showing you that when you get towards the ends, you just want to slide the gel over the ends of your hair and kind of comb through it so that you can blend that in with the braiding hair and make your braid nice and tight and keep that frizz down. So I still have a few ends to braid down, but this is what the style looked like once I got all of the braids installed. You can see, of course, again, like I was talking about with managing this process, I could easily go out with it done like this and not have it completely finished, and I would be presentable. It wouldn't be a problem. So this is another way to kind of manage the style without having to do it all at once. As long as you have those roots installed, you can kind of leave the ends and the finishing parts off so that you don't have to do it all in one session. And you can also see how with the way this is parted, I definitely have different ways I can wear it as far as parting it on the side or in the middle, and even kind of pulling all the braids over to one side. The last thing I wanted to show is how I do my ends. So I do this tucking or folding braid technique. I've mentioned this before, but this is just to keep the braid tight. And it's really important at the ends because as the braiding hair starts to taper off and feather, those strands get really thin and it's hard to keep them tight. So if you're using this folding technique, it's a good way to grip the braid so that you can keep the strands pulled together. I also borrow from each strand as it starts to thin out. If I get one piece that's thinner than the others, I'll just borrow through. And then I kind of pluck any knots or tangles that come up as I go along. Now, as I make my way towards the end of the braid and it's really starting to thin out, I go ahead and split it into 2 sections. So I just take one of the legs and divide it between the other 2, and I 2-strand twist this very tightly all the way to the end. So this is going to make sure that I don't have any open hair on the end of my braid. It keeps my braid nice and tight all the way down to the ends, and it makes it super easy to dip it, especially since I have so many braids to go through before I can dip the hair. It just keeps everything together. So I skipped over dipping the hair. You guys know how that goes. If not, you can check out one of my previous videos and see how to do that. But this is the finished look and I'm so happy with it. You can see the color in the back for sure. Also, you can see the length of the braids. This 30-inch hair ends up hitting right at butt length for me. So I'm happy with that. That's a little bit longer than what I normally do with my. And here I'm just showing again how I can pull those braids off to the side. This is what my side part looks like. And this is how that color is kind of popping through. Also, you know, when I part it towards the middle or when I pull the strands a certain way, from the front, you can't even see the color. It looks like I have full braids and they're all black. It's kind of like a business in the front, party in the back. If I was on a Zoom call or something, I could just leave it like this and you wouldn't even know I had color in there. Not that this color is super drastic, but initially when I decided to do this style, I was gonna do rainbow hair, and that's exactly what I was thinking about, is if I wanted to hide it, I could. Not that it's that big of a deal. Most likely I'll be wearing it like this so that I can let the color show, but I still like that stark contrast as well between the black and the red, the way it just kind of pops out instead of being streaks. So I really like this off to the side look too. It looks really cute for a night out, just to have that pop of color on the shoulder. And of course you can see the color still from the back as well. I think what I'm loving the most about this style is just that the fullness of having the smaller braids and then the length of the hair just really makes the style versatile, so you can switch up the different ways that you can wear it, so you're not wearing the same braid style every day. Here I was playing around with the idea of a half up, half down, but I don't know if I really like it with the down part being one color and it's kind of mismatched. But you know, the buns are always an option, and I think this is really cute, the way the back is red, and then from the front you still only see black except for the little pop of red that's in the bun. And then of course you can control how much of the red you want to even pop out in the bun. So I'm loving this style. I hope you like it too. If you did, make sure you hit the like button and also hit the subscribe and notification bell, because you know I'll be back with another one. Thanks for watching.